Okay, good morning, everyone. Yeah, I'm very honored to be here today. So my name is Hye Sung Park. I came from one Institute of Graduate Studies in Philadelphia. So I came to U.S. in 2000 as a one Buddhist minister and studied Buddhism, meditation, and also counseling. And so I just recently last year graduated from Loyola in Maryland pastoral counseling program. So from there I was very interested in from my clinical experience with people who have mental difficulties. This coping theory is very important for us, how people can overcome their day-to-day difficulties with their spirituality too. So your religion and spirituality could be good resource to help your healthy life. So that's my interest. So and that's why I choose this topic. Topic background. So I'd like to investigate unique Buddhist coping pathways within religious coping theory, and also to get a deeper understanding of Asian immigrant Buddhist coping, and specifically to investigate how mindfulness is understood and practiced by the Korean immigrant one Buddhist population and their generational differences as well as similarities. So in the US and the West, when we talk about Buddhism, and meditation and mindfulness is very famous and they use very well, but not many other religious coping, Buddhist coping resources are known to the US. So I was curious about how other resources from Buddhism can help people. So I'd like to research on people who have faith in Buddhism, how they use mindfulness or meditation in their day-to-day life. The research question, one of the research questions was, what is the place or function of meditation and mindfulness among the religious coping strategies of Korean American non-Buddhists? How are these coping practices woven into fabric of these individuals' other coping strategies? How is it related to each other? And what generational differences or similarities exist among Korean American Buddhists in terms of stress and coping methods? Maybe many of you not familiar with all those terms, so I'd like to introduce a little bit of key term here, definition. Coping is like expending conscious effort to resolve personal and interpersonal problems. So make an effort to overcome difficulties. Excuse me. And meditation is the act of inward contemplation. So this meditation is not just belong to Buddhism, but other religion has this meditation practice too, form of meditation. Mindfulness is more like the principles of presence of mind, acceptance, and non-judgment, detachment. And Dharma is the Buddhist term, the one ultimate reality, or Buddha's teaching or doctrine, or truth, or righteousness or virtue. And here is more like Dharma, it means the truth or Buddha's teaching. And one Buddhism is a new form of Buddhism from Korea from 1916, relevant to contemporary secular world. And in one Buddhist temple, there's one circle is there that's enshrined. The circular symbol is called Ilwansang. It's a sign of Dharmakaya Buddha, the cosmic body of the Buddha, or symbol of the truth. And one Buddhist religious canon reveals the heart of Mahayana Buddhist doctrine in a renovated and simplified form. So in the later of the day, Reverend Jinun Park will introduce one Buddhism in more detail, so I just briefly introduce to you about one Buddhism. So one Buddhism in U.S. history is almost over than 30 years now. And methodology for this study, I use a qualitative method, and especially grounded theory used in this study to study people and processes in their natural context. So I Sample is Korean immigrant, one Buddhist community in the U.S. And criterion for this research is I choose someone has lived in the U.S. more than 5 years as a Korean immigrant, or they are born here, and practice one Buddhism at least twice, participate one Buddhist service at least twice a month for 6 months, and they have ability to communicate in English or Korean. And I kind of choose maximum variation, so gender, age, year of practice is kind of diverse. So I did a verbal interview with 23 participants, age 60 to 90 minutes. And participants were Koreans from 6 Won Buddhist temples located in New York, New Jersey, Washington, D.C., Massachusetts, and California. This is demographics of participants. So 74% are first generation, 22% are second generation, and 4% 1.5 generation. And this is age. Participants for this research. So 26% is age between 21 to 30, and 13% are age between 31 to 40, and 22% are age between 41 to 50, and 13% are age between 50 to 70, and 26% are age between 71 and over. And this is the gender. So male and female total number is half and half. But when you see the generation, first generation is more female than male, the participants for this research. And second generation are male. I tried to get a diverse gender for second generation, but because of time limit, I have to meet them face to face. Most of them, the male has some time to meet me. So I'd like to do in the later future study for second generation female participants. Yeah. To assess the quality of this study, the researcher received an audit process of the coding from a research colleague, consulted with the dissertation committee, and received participant checks. So it took a whole year to finish this project. Findings, I have 3 main findings from this research. Mindfulness is a common central practice for all generations. And 13 themes are manifest, and generational differences are exist. And these themes are closely related to each other for realizing a sense of identity, which is conforming or longing for who one truly is. So immigration status challenging them to finding who they are because they lost their social status from Korea, and here is different. And financial difficulties and language and cultural barriers, and all these difficulties make them challenging to find who they are, and their Buddhist practice helped them to find it. So I like the previous presentation, Dr. Grace. She talked about spirit is not related with gender or age or anything, so this who they are is not related all those impermanent conditions. So for detail of finding, first one is mindfulness is a central theme, and how it works for them is that the acculturation process kind of motivate themselves to finding who they are. So for first generation, so loss of social status or financial status and family issues, challenging them to find some answer from their religion. For second generation, they are born here, but they have many difficulties with relations with their parents. And then they are very different from their friends. So they want to look, finding out who they are from their religion. And mindfulness will help them to calming down themselves and accept who they are as it is. And so that help them to find sense of identity. And that's kind of empowering self-reliance, and they are kind of internally spiritual growth is going on from these difficulties. This is a detail of the 13 themes I found from the interview. So this first, mindfulness is the most frequent theme for them. So I'd like to introduce sub-themes, what is underneath of this mindfulness theme. Is introspection, awareness, and threefold study. Threefold study is one Buddhist term, and this is like condensing form from the traditional Buddhism eightfold path. So this is cultivating their spirit, cultivate their wisdom, and cultivate their wholesome action, and then nurturing their Buddha nature. Second manifest theme was faith in Dharma. The sub-theme is applying one Buddhist teaching in their life. And then they appreciate the practical aspect of the teaching. And there is some other answer from this question is like how to be a good Buddhist. They have faith in the teaching, but at the same time, always good and nice Buddhist person is kind of hard. So there's a difficulty in there too. And third, frequent theme was acculturation. For the second generation, the emphasis on they are different from their parents. That's their struggling. And minority status, not just as a Korean American is minority, but among Korean American society, Buddhist and non-Buddhist is really minority. So there are talk about minority status is difficult, and difficult to adjust to new life. And the temple is the theme, and under there, socializing and social support, and they are seeking wisdom from the temple, and healthy retreat. Retreat is a form of like 1 week of retreat setting. They meditate together and lecturing, conversation together. For the second generation, they talked about not value or appreciate the Dharma talk or sermon at the service because of some language difficulties. And another theme was practice, and usually meditation and prayer, chanting, bowing, they're using it, and that's very helpful for them. And education and sense of identity. In education part, I will talk about a little bit later about detail the generational differences. But briefly, first generation learning the Buddha's teaching from the official text from scripture. But the second generation, still there are difficulty to reading scripture in Korean or in English too, because the scripture translated Korean to English, so that terms is not familiar yet. So they have talk about difficulties. And other themes are like calm and peace. From their religious practice, they learn about positive perspective to see themselves and others and to the world, and feel more happiness, and learn patience and clarity and gratitude. And also openness and understanding coming from their religious practice. And then understanding of karma sometimes is helpful, sometimes not helpful. Depends on how they're using it. Struggling with karma. Karma is Buddhist term, the result of a person's action, they receive some result, or the cycle of cause and effect. So some previous action influence current my life. So struggling with karma, usually they have difficult time in the US. Think about, I'm doing good works, why I have to have these difficulties? They kind of question and make them struggle. But someone has a positive way to deal with this, from this understanding of karma, when they focus on karma in the present moment more. So depends on how they deal with it, it creates more happiness in the future. So they are more focused on present that help them to positive way. and acceptance and morality and compassion coming from those participants. That's helpful for their as a coping resources, their practice. This is some diagram I would like to show you for the first generation. Has like a form of a circle. I draw this circle because they have very strong resources from their learning. Faith in Dharma and mindfulness is very strongly support to them because they have formal understanding of the teaching, so they know how to use this teaching in their life. So they deal with the acculturation process very well with these resources. And temple kind of support them. So through there, the next frequent theme like education, sense of identity, and they doing more practice can happen. And then after their practice, they feel more calm and peace, openness and compassion. I drew this diagram for the second generation more like open halfway of circle because they're not just very fully have some resources from the temple, but there's a lot of things we need to working on more. So acculturation is most frequent theme for the second generation compared to first generation. And they didn't talk about faith in Dharma because they didn't have much understanding of the teaching yet. So acculturation, they're struggling with differentiating from parents, even their religious practice is different, they say. And minority status is difficult, and mindfulness meditation is very helpful for them. And temple is good resource for them to learning all those teachings. But translation issues is there, so hard to read scriptures. And so that's why they choose informal learning from their parents or individually with teachers. Through there, they have like sense of identity and acceptance theme is coming up from that. I'd like to share a little bit about what is the faith in Dharma in first generation talk about. So not many research really talk about faith in Buddhism, so I'd like to share here. A participant talk about faith in Dharma. And the first stage is like depending on temple. So they occasionally attending the temple, but not regularly, and just they enjoy the Dharma service itself once a week. And second stage, they like go to temple for regularly, like more than 10 years. They feel more regular attendance and applying the teaching in their life more. And they feel like becoming one with the teaching Dharma in the later stages. So we talk about this timeless and placeless mindfulness in their life can happen. And there's many questions about is there other religious coping theory. They talk about there always positive and negative religious coping exist. And how about Buddhist? Positive coping is like helping them to have calm and peaceful mind state and empowering self-reliance. Both positive and negative influence from Buddhist coping is more like motivate them to be a good person, but at the same time it's difficult to be create always good person all the time. And for example of this both positive and negative influence from the Buddhist coping is like morality and how to be a good Buddhist and struggling with karma I talked before. So because of time limit, I need to skip, but maybe this is my last. Would like to show you finding 3 of this relationship between these 13 themes. From the right side, so acculturation in Buddhism talk about suffering is very important theme in their life. So acculturation give them questioning about their life, and that need to find the answer. In that process, they need the temple, the left side. Temple support them this religious teaching and practice, understanding, teaching more deeply. from that they have more mindfulness in their life and faith in Dharma. Hand in hand, they support each other, create calm and peace and compassion in their life, and through that they feel sense of identity and accept who they are, and creating more positive and new life from that point. So this research supporting previous research on Asian Buddhist coping in their native Eastern culture, meaning-making, coping, and social support happen from their Buddhist practice. And mindfulness, spiritual struggle, and morality, this kind of theme coming out from non-Asian American Buddhist coping theory already. So it's met with this research too. And this research, in addition to all those confirming previous research, this on finding a unique characteristic of the second generation and finding a mindfulness coping in Buddhist community related with their faith. A question of why mostly focus on meditation and mindfulness for the second generation could be they focus on more mind rather than ritualistic practice, and applying short-term form of meditation when it is necessary, they're using it. And they talk about differentiate from the first generation and Euro-American Buddhist. So for the future study, need to focus on more how we create, now we know about difficulties, and then how we can support the second generation more fully understand Buddhist teaching and using it in their life. So I introduced like form of retreat for them. So mindfulness is not just peace in their own mind, but also helps to solve actual problem. And combination of three aspects of Buddhist coping, namely mindfulness, faith in Dharma, and temple, plays an important role for one Buddhist. And clinical consideration is necessary for the second generation of Buddhists. Yeah, I have more, but because of time, I need to stop here. Thank you. Yeah.